Video 11 in our series on outgrowing, outworn worldviews. Time for a recap. So we need big stories, personally and collectively, to navigate through life, to know what our values and goals are, to know where we're headed in life and how. Our big stories right now are dissolving or breaking apart or colliding or perpetrating violence against each other. We gave examples in previous videos, looked at examples, but what would an adequate worldview need to have? And so I'm asking that question in terms of what would mine need to have, as a way of getting clear on what yours would need to have. So here's some of the things that we've talked about in past videos in terms of an adequate worldview for our time, which also means an adequate mythology for our time, or an adequate philosophy. Mine's called depth philosophy. So, myths have been the basis of worldviews throughout history. Myths eventually wear out and they get replaced by fictions. So I've raised the question, why don't we just get rid of absolute belief and be guided by inspiring fictions, inspiring stories? So for me, that would be part of it. I talked about knowing through imagination. The term I coined for this is imagine knowing. It's in many different traditions, philosophical and spiritual, including Hermetic tradition, which is the one I tend to spend the most time with. We talked about values as well, including unity in diversity. Diversity is how the universe does things. It's why the universe is a creative place. It's why the earth is creative. Diversity of all kinds of things, of forms, of ecological niches, of ways to love, of abilities, of all kinds of stuff. Values like humaneness, integrity, and love. Faith, not in terms of belief, which is a defensive structure that's outmoded, but in terms of faith in humanity, our ability to dream together, to vision together, to build something better than what we have right now. One thing I haven't mentioned a little bit, but it's implicit in all this, I think of them as character capacities for a new worldview. So we need our sense of humanity instead of becoming mechanical on the inside and treating each other like things. We need discernment, so we need the ability to see in the dark, so to speak, to look evil in the face when it's in front of us, as Rollo May, the psychologist, recommended, but also to understand the higher possibilities of human nature. Collaboration is a character capacity that we will need. Empathy, inspiration, self-honesty, a sense of awe, and perhaps even joy. Generosity, emotional intelligence, and the ability to manage our feelings instead of just splashing other people with them or projecting them onto people. Creativity, absolutely key to all of this. I mentioned love, and then also courage. There's a wonderful line from Paul Tillich's book, The Courage to Be, where he says something like, how does he put it? He mentions that courage isn't just another attribute of the mind, but one that makes many others possible. Maya Angelou said something similar. And Tillich talks about the courage to see through illusions. And he says at one point, the power of being manifest in such courage is so great that the gods tremble in fear of it. That's the kind of courage we need in our day. So also with this new worldview, we talked about the continuity of tradition in the sense of reinterpreting what the old stories are telling us. I mentioned at some point, I think, a part of the Gospels where Jesus says, before you remove the splinter from your brother's eye, take the beam out of your own eye, right? Today we call that projection. There's a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of truth in all these tales, all these stories, all these old accounts. So not so much pretending that tradition hasn't happened, but taking the best of it and dreaming it forward. A sense of place, that's where some of my work comes in terra psychology. Also, the question of how do we live on an animate earth? How do we live ourselves back into the great conversation with everybody else who's on this planet? How do we honor the earth? Also, what's our creation story? You know, scientifically, there's the Big Bang, and then theorists are talking about an inflationary period before that. There's counterparts to all of this in ancient mythology. So, what sort of a creation story would give us a sense of purpose? That would give us a sense of perhaps being on a long adventure toward greater, higher, more expansive, deeper consciousness, toward specieshood. What might that look like? More on that in a little bit later. So how we know things. So that's part of philosophy too. It's called epistemology, but how we know things through science, how we know things through the humanity, how we use imagine knowing. So imagination, again, is a wisdom path. One thing that I think is important here too, in terms of beliefs, is the rejection of what Muhammad ibn Arabi refers to as metaphysical idolatry. What he means is making a belief into an idol and then fighting with other people about their beliefs. It's long past time for us to outgrow this. So that should be a part of it. I talked about virtue ethics and an ethic of care over abstract principles, caring for each other. Is that really so hard to do? We come in doing that. We have to unlearn that in order to be horrible to each other. Collaboration, I mentioned that a little bit too. Here's something we might consider doing: replacing rulers with leaders and the voice of the people. We don't need rulers anymore. They were never a good idea. A lot of the people we refer to nowadays as leaders are actually rulers. They hold power over us. A good myth or mythology often has gods in it. Well, Jung talked a lot about archetypes. I write a lot about animate powers. What if we reimagine the powers of nature as having some kind of consciousness? That might be interesting. More about that momentarily. Also, there's a push over time for personified figures like gods to perhaps give way at some point to spirit. So not so much a theological sense of spirit, more like a post-belief experience of, to just move across cultures, the Tao, Chi, grace, Holy Ghost. Let's see, big mind is what the Hermetics call it, great mystery, we've probably heard that term, great spirit, mana, ashe. The Force comes from this idea in Star Wars. George Lucas was aware of this, probably through Joseph Campbell. Good stories have heroines and heroes. What would they look like today? Not the lone gunman riding into town and shooting the place up and leaving again. We need better heroes. We need better stories. We need wizards and tricksters and animals and wise people and all kinds of others. We need Aunt Nancy from African American folklore and Brer Rabbit. We need Coyote. We need all kinds of things that aren't just the muscular hero. And he belongs in there somewhere, but let's give him a rest. Heroes need rest. So also, of course, in all of this, the arts have to be prominent: dance, play, theater, fun, comedy, pageantry, poetry, and music of all kinds. That should be a part of this, and also special events. So, Earth Day, LGBTQ Families Day. Why don't we make that? Why don't we make all of these international? Some of them are already. The Day of the Dead, Chinese New Year. So again, continuity with the past, respect for the past, but bringing it into the present. And with all of this too, there's symbols that permeate all of this. For me, in my dissertation, I talked about the silver tree of gnosis, of direct knowing through imagination. I also talk a lot in my fiction about lighting the lamps, lamp lighting, as a new form of activism with ancient roots, a post-heroic form. What about a cause of some kind, namely creating this kind of mythology, this kind of worldview? That might be interesting to do together. And then the goal, in my fiction, I call it Terrania, the good society, planetary, but grown from the ground up, reimagined and put into being from the ground up, not from the top down. So in all of this, all of this reimagining, all of this tending of ideas and visions and all the rest of it, fiction helps because this has been done in fiction more than once. There are many models in fiction about how all this can look. And in the next video, I'm going to say a little bit about my own fiction, because everything I just mentioned is included in my fiction.